Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi everyone, I have a lovely conversation with Kieran Bew, who plays Bill O'Hara on HBOMAX's Warrior. Kieran shares stories from the set of Warrior and the weather challenges they faced in Cape Town on the very first day of filming. Warrior fans have been thrilled with my recent lineup of guests. Trust me, so have I. While I love talking about Warrior, it's been even more rewarding to get to know the actors behind the characters. It was fascinating to hear about Kieran's acting training and theater work in London. I was even more impressed to learn about his fencing background, where he holds several épée titles. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. My favor, as usual, is to please continue to share this podcast with others. It would also mean so much if you would rate it and leave me feedback. If you would like to help keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show, like my latest amazing patron, Angie Hilbert, and visit my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan to make a donation. For comments or suggestions, email me at sifumimichan@gmail.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now on with the show. Hello, Kieran. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So we are dealing with some internet issues, and it's working against us, but we're gonna make this work. So apologies to listeners if we have some intermittent, but it's gonna make you all the more anxious to hear what Kieran's going to say. We're going to build that anticipation. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. And I know this has just been a really crazy year. And I've seen lovely pictures of you and your beautiful family. How is everyone doing during this pandemic and just life in general? How are things going over there? And you're in London, yes?
Yes, we're in London, and thankfully everybody's healthy and well. My son was born in February. And so we have been kind of locked down, hunkering down, enjoying his first few months. It's been great, and everybody's really well. We've missed he hasn't seen his grandparents yet, which is a shame because they're a bit too far away. But they're also staying safe, so they're well. So we're very thankful for that. Yeah.
Yes.
But, it's been a really nice time. Summer here has been very hot. We have a heat wave right now today, which might be why we're having internet issues. I don't know, but we're very blessed with the weather right now.
Okay, that's really funny because I'm in Florida and we're like, it's hot again. So it's all perspective, right? It's all perspective. But yeah. I have been to lovely London, and it can get pretty bitter and cold.
It can, and it's a funny place. It's where, when it's not warm enough, people will say, when's the sun going to come out? As soon as it comes, it's too hot. Now it's too cold. There's too much rain. We have weather. We just have like a sort of, we don't really have a climate. We just get weather, and you never really know what it's going to be. Which funnily enough, that's a lot like Cape Town, where we filmed Warrior. Cape Town, the wind, the rain, the sun. One of the drivers said to me, "You have to pack 4 sets of clothes in the boot of the car because you never know what day you're going to have." And it's not that dissimilar here, I have to say.
Really? Okay, so that's interesting because I just had this lovely conversation with Langley, and he didn't mention this whole like temperamental weather. Yeah. He painted this like gorgeous picture of like Cape Town as this, lovely place, which I know it is, but I didn't hear about the weather. So this is interesting.
It's stunning. It's the best. It's mercurial, I'd say. Mercurial. You just like, it's sort of fascinating and exciting and kind of relentless too. The wind is phenomenal because it comes round the Cape and it sort of attacks, and then it swirls around in all different ways. When we first started shooting Warrior in 2017, they were going through the worst drought in Cape Town in 100 years, and there was no water. And everybody had to water ration constantly, and you weren't allowed to shower. You had to have like 20-second, 30-second showers in the morning. You could only flush the loo once a day. And people were really, really worried about, there was a day zero that we were all working towards where the water would completely run out. And so we were all, as foreigners, we were all very conscientiously trying to take care of our part of what we were doing, and what we were using, and getting used to it.
Yeah.
And the very first week we shot Warrior, the wind was howling around the Chinatown set. And we were worried. I said, is it always like this? Because it feels like the set's going to blow in. And they said, no, this is normal. And then the very first sequence we were supposed to shoot was actually a very large crowd scene in Chinatown, and they had like 300 supporting artists there, all in costume, and it rained for hours and hours and hours. They hadn't had rain for weeks.
Oh my God.
It rained for hours, and we couldn't shoot. And then myself and Tom Weston-Jones and Hoon Lee went and shot some of the scenes in Chow's chicken shop instead. Which wasn't quite ready. They sort of just threw some raw chicken in there and said, right, guys, film. We've got to kind of try and dry all these people. So the Cape Town weather surprises the Cape Townians too. It's not just foreigners.
Wow, but
it's an amazing place.
That is so amazing, though, too, for the first day on the set. It's kind of like good luck for the town, but it wasn't such great for the production. But the town was probably like, yes, we got rain.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely were. Everybody was, It's a fascinating way of living. I actually came back to London and kept using less water. It got to the point where you sort of, when you're showering and there's not a bucket there, you find it quite unusual.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I've had the fortunate exposure to a lot of third world countries, and when you stay there and you get used to a certain routine, you realize when you come back to your luxuries and the things that you have, and you're like, wow, we have so much.
Yeah, we have so much that we don't even notice how much we are, wasting is true. I mean, we've all known about, climate change. We've all known about sort of not being wasteful and recycling.
Most of us know.
Well, most of us. Yeah. I remember being taught it in classes, so some of the earliest things I got taught, and yet only when you're in a situation like that, in a country like that, where it's, people have had to laminate signs and put them everywhere and saying, please don't turn the taps on, and be constantly reminded. You realize actually how little you can get through the day with. Mm-hmm. And people that started inventing all these amazing little devices to save water, reuse water in different ways. Any time they did a washing load in the house, reusing the water that came out of the wash machine. And I think it's pretty fascinating. Like when you put in that extreme situation, you have to adapt. The second year we went back, there was an issue with generators, and I think there was a typhoon in Mozambique which caused outages and various things. So Cape Town as a city went into load shedding. So they have scheduled shutdowns for 4-hour periods of a time. Sometimes they'll have 2 back-to-backs or 8 hours where there's just no electricity. And so everyone has to adapt to that too. So we have charming stories about actors being, we're learning lines by candlelight, but the reality is
how romantic
without
water.
For us, we're like, oh, it was so.
I'm with you 100%.
I mean, I joke, but it's a serious situation.
It is. Oh, no, 100%. And we felt the same way. Like, we are in Florida, so obviously it's like hurricanes and whatnot. And the one year and I think it was Maria, I can't remember the name of the hurricanes because there's so many, but we were without electricity for like a week, and that was not great, but it was manageable. And I was thinking, Puerto Rico's been out of it for 6 months at this point, and I'm going, It's all perspective. And I was always saying to my husband, I'm like, I can deal without electricity, but the water is an issue. So when you said there was a water shortage, I was like, oh, like for me, like I loved like being conservative about electricity, not having to turn on the TV, not being on my phone because I didn't want to waste the battery. Like that stuff is great, but the water, no. I need to have like my shower and my bathroom, and like those things are quite important to me. But I love that we're having this conversation actually, because it's just a reminder, right? Even though we're all living in what we feel is restrictive right now, right? A lot of people feel so restricted. There's things that we're kind of trying to hold back from, but at the same time, we're again in our homes where it's comfortable, and it's a good reminder. I like the gratitude reminders. So
absolutely, I think if you've got the basic gratitude, for I've got a roof over my head, I've got everything I need today, is a great reset. If for any state of mind you're in, it sounds kind of brutal, but actually there's an honesty and a truth about, have you got enough food? Have you got a roof over your head? Does everybody you love have what they need? Then you're okay. And I think we do have so much. I mean, the word privilege gets used in all kinds of different ways, but I mean, it's so apparent when you go to Cape Town. We live in the city, so we stay in rented accommodation that has security. We get picked up by a wonderful driving team, and we get driven through the city, past the townships, to the set, where there's the industry in Cape Town is fascinating, because the film industry employs people from every area and every demographic. So we're really lucky as castmates. We're not just international. The crew and everybody who works there on the ground is also international. And if you chat to people, you can have a really fascinating time, and you can't but reflect on how much some people have and how little others have. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And do you find that when you speak with people that are from these various parts of the world, that even though it seems like maybe they don't quote unquote have things, they're still very happy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that it points out is how much you don't need. The fact that there's an opulence to having however many computer devices we need and whatnot. And yeah, of course, there is also there can also be a patronizing attitude of, oh, they don't have anything, and then you chat, and people do. They have, of course, they're living lives that are completely full and completely content and really happy. But unless you talk to people, unless you actually mix, you make judgments, you make assessments, you second guess, and you come from a place of the fish tank that you grow up. Like I grew up in the north of England, and you come up against your own ignorance, really. And it's one of the best things about doing Warrior was that we were in Cape Town. It is an incredible place that is so complicated and full, and constantly people coming in and out, and it's a very grounding place.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to visit after hearing everyone talk so highly about it, and it's been on my list anyway to visit. So I am. I'm definitely coming to Cape Town.
I can't wait until you take one of the classes. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes. If I'm lucky, Brett will let me like lead one of them, So,
you'll definitely be doing that. I want to do the double hooks. I want the double hooks. So please bring some weapons.
Bring the weaponry. Yeah. I can do that. I can definitely do that. It'll be a lot of fun. And so, speaking of Warrior, you play this really, really fun character, and it's kind of the character that one minute you love him, and the other minute you're really mad at him, and then one minute you love him again, and it's just this kind of ping pong back and forth of emotion of, he's just got so many facets to him. And so I'd love for you to tell me what it's like to play Bill O'Hara, and some of your favorite, parts of the show, because it's been real roller coaster with him. Like at first I'm like, don't like him. And then I'm like, oh, but Bill, he's got, this going on. And then he's gambling and I don't like him again. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's such fun playing Bill. It's total pleasure. For a start, the scripts that I got were really exciting and complicated, you know. And I instantly knew that this guy, I instantly knew it was going to be tricky to play him, and that people were going to make judgments and they were going to sit on, I hate him, I love him, I hate him. And if I was clumsy with it, people would just simply hate the character, and they would dismiss the character as a 2D kind of trope or a stereotype. And so I was determined to avoid that. And it's interesting hearing people judge him for his gambling and his choices. Some people judge him because he's not great to his wife. Some people judge him because he's a gambler, or he drinks, or he makes racist comments. And other people judge him for totally different reasons. I get a lot of messages from people saying that I've let them down.
Really?
That Bill's disappointed them. Yeah. And I don't generally watch TV and think I have to like everybody.
Right.
But it has become important. It has become important in stories for people to stay connected to the choices that a character makes. I think if you see a character behave in a way that's abrupt and you absolutely disagree with it and it's completely vile, it's very easy to stay on the outside and say, I hate that person. As a storyteller, if you take people along the journey and you show them the decision that has to be made, and you allow them to be present when the person makes the wrong decision, I feel like they stay connected more to that character. And so I kept looking in the script, all these moments where Bill had a thought or a chance to do the right thing and he'd do the wrong thing. And also equally, I went through the script and I looked at all the times he makes judgments based on race and comments. And I really tried to make that as pedestrian and ordinary as possible. Because it's the kind of racism that I've come across where somebody so casually will just chat, and it's just part of their routine, that they don't even know that they're racist, that they're making these racist comments and these judgments. And I felt like Bill needed to sit in a really real place and not just be not just be a nasty guy.
Right. So I actually think you play Bill masterfully. I really love the moments of reflection, the moments where I feel like I want to punch him in the face, but then he redeems himself, or I could see the struggle in the decisions. And you know, we were talking about that casual racism, and of course, that's a huge thing that's been happening worldwide now in so many facets. But especially since the pandemic, the Asian community in general around the world has been facing a lot of more outward racism than I think maybe has been given light to. And this has been it's such an important film, such an important TV series for the Asian community to see themselves represented in something positively and multidimensionally. We're not just seeing the one stereotypical, you know, Bruce Lee character that does kung fu that's really amazing. Like, we're seeing just like every, you know, range of human, and that's what Asians are, human, right? And so it's particularly meaningful though at this point in time. I think it's just such an interesting time, and so kind of to be a part of that must be a little fascinating as well, because I mean, literally the fans is kind of what brought back the next season, and they really like kind of petitioned around it, believed in it, and pushed for it. And I think it would have been very tone deaf of HBO to shut it down, especially with everything happening. But I'm not saying it's because of that, because obviously it's a great show, but it must feel kind of interesting to be a part of something that's got this kind of cultural dynamic happening.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that when we looked at the source material right at the very beginning of season 1, lots of us were doing research and reading different books and then passing them between each other, which wasn't really asked of us, but it just turned out the cast all independently had started doing it. And the things like the Chinese Exclusion Act, I didn't know about that. I mean, as a British educated guy, I had no idea.
Of course.
Which was fascinating. And we saw the parallels. They were apparent anyway. But as we filmed the first season and news sort of was creeping along, it was sort of moving across, and things, of course, by season 2 were becoming really uncomfortably close. And then the pandemic seems to have just unleashed this hideous kind of reaction from people. And it's awful to think that that's either always been there or hasn't been covered or hasn't been reported. I mean, it's interesting. I did have a couple of friends and family members who, when I'd mentioned about the rise in violence towards the Asian community, not just in America, but in Britain too, and in Canada and around the world, that they didn't know that. And for me, I have this, one of the gifts of Warrior is having this international friendship, these international friendships now, where when one of us can't sleep around the world, we just call each other. So we've got
you have the time zone covered.
There's always somebody awake.
There's someone awake, yeah.
And there's always somebody traveling to a time zone where they're slightly jet lagged. So they're like, "Oh, I just thought I'd give you a call.
How are you?
Check in, you know, and how's the kids?" And it's that gift. I've never been part of a show where 2 years after the show, and this is before the show was picked up again, everybody's talking as much as they did when we worked together. 2 years.
Yes.
So so what I suppose what I'm saying is my eyes and my social media feeds, at least my own personal feeds, were full of the reaction, the reporting, the stories that were happening, because my friends were talking about it.
Right.
Whereas a lot of people I know, they don't have access to that. So if you're not seeing it and you're not being confronted with it, you just don't know. And it's been pretty shocking, I have to say. I was really surprised by that. Warrior being picked up is obviously a wonderful thing for representation and for the business, but it is a horrible turn of events that our show has become relevant in that way. But then I guess my father loves history and is a sort of I suppose a stereotypical dad, in that he likes to tell me about the Romans or tectonic plate movements or migration patterns across Europe, like, you know, strange things that he's been reading about. And the Romans is a really hot topic for my dad. He likes to come back to that, and he reads about French history and all kinds of things. Well, it's just really nice, and that's one of the things that we share. And we've sort of been discussing this history in America and the Exclusion Act and Trump's Muslim ban and subsequent events. And my dad has always said that, you know, you study history repeats itself. You know, you learn from history, and obviously the angle, the view, primary, you know, secondary, tertiary material, like who is writing the story, because it's been pretty shocking seeing what people have had to endure and what they've been going through. And I think Warrior and cinema, actually, all the cinema at the moment that's giving representation for people, it's amazing to see the reaction. And of course, I don't have personal experience. I observed that, and I'm really, really pleased for that. And it's interesting seeing the reaction this week, seeing how well Shang-Chi has gone down.
Yes,
Shang-Chi, yeah. Forgive me, Shang-Chi has gone down because I've watched, when I started Warrior, I followed a whole new group of critics and people in the media who I didn't follow before, and I've read and I've listened, and they've talked about our show, they've talked about other shows, they've talked about issues. And so I think one of the best things about our job as actors is you have to learn crazy skills. Like, you've got to learn to abseil off a mountain and make it look like you've done it for 20 years, or ride horses, or drive cars, or study periods of history that are just unbelievable, or look at a human psychology and portray something hideous, but with empathy. You know, you have to put yourself in a position where you have to be impartial to play somebody that's difficult or somebody that's chronically human, or however you want to sort of term it, or just hideous. And one of the best things about Warrior is the education that you get. And I think HBO greenlighting, picking back up the show and greenlighting it, it's nice to hear you say that you don't think it's because of that, because I always really strongly believed that the show was going to get picked back up. We got cancelled inadvertently by a sort of, a business merger that was higher up than the channel. It was higher up, but also we were on Cinemax in America, where I'd love to see the official figures if there are any, but I think not many people saw the show. And then because in Britain we go out on Sky, which HBOMAX have a deal with Sky and Comcast, which does, I think it's Germany, Italy, and the UK that they have distribution for. And I think that runs out in 2025, I read today. Now, the reason that's interesting is because there's a delay on how it comes out in our region, but there are different pots of money for everybody to advertise and sell shows, which meant when Warrior came out here, there was no advertising attached to that. So our show kind of went out here under the radar as well.
Okay.
So when Warrior was put on HBO Max on the 1st of January, it opened the show out to millions of people who had no idea the show existed. And even this week, I'm still getting messages today. I got a message today about an hour ago on Twitter from somebody saying, I can't believe that I've just found this show. I had no idea it existed. Why is nobody talking about this show? Now, that's been quite frustrating for us as a cast, because we poured so much work into it, and we're a very large ensemble, and we've worked on it for a couple of years. But what's really exciting about it is to see the reaction, to see the sort of re-release of the product, re-release of it, and just see people gravitate towards it and find different things in it as well. It's not just I thought this was just a sort of kung fu thing, and then they realized it's actually this sort of sprawling, almost Dickensian kind of epic with a massive cast.
Yes.
But as Jonathan always said, he never wanted to make a documentary, and he never wanted to make a historically accurate drama. He didn't want to make a period drama. He's making entertainment. And it's just he very cleverly hides a lot of very interesting, subtle arguments within something that's, on an episode-to-episode basis, pretty engaging and pretty punchy.
Definitely. It's historical fiction, but it's absolutely number one entertaining. Like it is, it's very, very great. There's a couple of things to unpack in everything you just mentioned. One was you said, here being raised in England, I didn't have education about the things happening in America. And I'll just tell you, as Asian American that was, born in the US and raised here in Florida, I didn't either. And that's actually one of the things that I'm petitioning for. I'm writing a bill with Congress right now to include AAPI history into our curriculum. So it's not just a worldwide thing that doesn't know about different countries and the nuances. Like it is something that, like many ethnic studies here, is not erased, but not taught. And if it's not taught, it does become erased, right? It does become, part of the problem. It perpetuates the problem of us as perpetual foreigners. So it certainly is great to even get historical fiction, right? Because then people may actually take the minute to say, that riot actually happened. Maybe there wasn't like 80 people on the street and it was 5 that got killed, but the point is that the event happened, right? And so why not enjoy it and then have a moment to learn, that can go hand in hand. I think that's super, super important. And in terms of just, the film finally kind of, the series finally kind of getting traction again, I think it's perfect. I think it's great that you have a rebirth of a new set of fans. I talked to Rich and he's got his Bring Bolo Back group that have been there from day one. But I love that there's new fans that are finally finding the show. And one thing I wanted to mention was I've been convincing a lot of people to watch it. And one of the ways I convince them, if they haven't seen it yet, is oftentimes I find they're Peaky Blinder fans. And I would say it's kind of like Peaky Blinders, but set in San Fran with the Chinese cast. Like it's like that story, but it's got the same feel where you kind of love every character that's on the screen and they're your favorite at the moment. And then the next moment you're like, wait, no, I like this one. You know, like every moment you just like fall in love with these characters for different reasons, and everyone's super cool. And you know, and so I love it because you just posted something really cute with your little one and Peaky Blinders. So I thought I would bring that up. But that's usually my pitch for people that I know that like Peaky Blinders, because I really find that kind of similar storytelling and very engaging. And
it's funny because I've only watched the first 2 episodes of Peaky Blinders. And the reason I only watched 2 was because I started watching it, and then I started watching Banshee, Jonathan's show, and I never got back to it. And of course, since then, Andrew Cordy's been in it, and I've got loads of the friends that have been in Peaky Blinders, which I haven't caught up with it. I tend to sort of save things and then binge them, and my boys, we've got a little flat cap. We've got a little Peaky Blinders cap for my boy. And,
so cute.
Very cute, isn't it?
So cute. No, it is good. It's kind of like the UK version of Warrior. That's how I'll pitch it to you.
Yeah. Well, no, you're not the only person that said that to me. And and of course, I'm thrilled to hear that, because that series has got such a huge following. And
it is phenomenal. I have to give props to that show, but yeah, it was super cute to see that. Now, earlier we were teasing about, you know, me doing the double hooks for you all at Cape Town, but I want to talk about fencing, because I see that you're this all around like world championship athlete in fencing, and you've even done stunt coordinating for film, and but that has been a huge part of your life. And so you, sir, are also a weapons expert, and I'd love to hear about that.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, that's very nice of you to ask about that. So as a kid, I'm one of 5 kids, and I think my parents' way of keeping us out of trouble was to pour us into sport, and we were all swimmers. So I was a competitive swimmer first as a child, and then I branched out from swimming when I was about, well, I say branched out, I was about 9. I started fencing, and by then I'd already been training a lot. It sounds crazy, but this is true. My grand once said to me, "Your house isn't like a normal house; it's like the army," because we were training all the time.
Right.
Swimmers train 2 hours after school every night, and you do galas every weekend. And I was on this sort of wheel of swimming. And then when I started fencing, very quickly, I wanted to compete. I wanted to get into a competition. I did the Northeast section. I was doing foil back then, which is, there are 3 weapons in modern fencing. There's the foil, there's the épée, and there's a saber, and they all have different targets. I'm sure you know. I'm not the fencing expert, so please feel free to explain. Well, a foil is a thin, quite a thin weapon. It's the smallest of the blades, and the target area is just the torso. So if you hit with the point, and if you hit anything else like the head, the arms, the legs, that is off target. The next weapon I'd talk about is épée, and you hit with the end again with the point, but it's a slightly larger weapon, and it takes more pressure to depress the nib. And in that discipline, the entire body is the target: the head, feet, hands, and that's the weapon that I fence. So we joke among the weapons that we do the real weapon, that ours is the authentic weapon. Right. Everything else is basically pretending. Right. And then there's the saber, where you hit with the flat of the blade, and there's lots of charging about with saber, and the target is above the waist. So head, arms, and above the waist, everything is the target area. So those are the 3 weapons. Like I said, I'm an épéist, a purist, if you like. And what's funny about fencing, I started when I was about 8 or 9, and I really did just want to be in 3 Musketeers. I just wanted to run around with 2 swords and bed sheets. But I went down that road of competing, and one of the things that they said to us at the club really early on was Bruce Lee was a fencer, and it was explained to us that Bruce Lee studied fencing and developed part of his discipline from the stop hit in fencing, which is attacking into someone's preparation. It's the most efficient way to get a hit. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I see it when I watch Bruce Lee films, I see stop hits everywhere because we were taught it.
And right.
As a kid, I didn't know who BruceLee was when they said that to me.
You're like, okay.
But I was like, wow, okay, who's he? And they were like, oh, is this guy? Just you wait. And so that was my introduction to him. It's like, so we're doing, because, fencing can be seen sometimes is quite a geeky sport. And it made it kind of cool for us as kids. I mean, I remember going back to school and saying to people that we'd been fencing with two swords. It was a complete lie. But I remember saying, oh, we were doing this thing where it was like TV. It was a long time before I got to do that. When I went to drama school at age 18, I went to LAMDA in London. The fight team at LAMDA was exceptional. Absolutely, like decades worth of experience, all condensed into stage combat training. And one of the head of drama once said to me at LAMDA, "Are you going to do any acting, Kieran?" Because I did so much combat fight at drama school, and once I got there was swords, shields, maces, all kinds, and lots of different styles. I mean, I didn't do martial arts, so there were lots of people there who had various different disciplines, and we would swap notes about, oh, well, what was it like when you competed? How do you see a fight, and how do you approach your discipline?
Right.
And I was really, really lucky to get this sort of really incredible education about not only how to sell an illusion on stage and screen, but I'd already had, years worth of competing. So I went on to become British under 16, under 17 épée champion. I competed every weekend. We were driving around the country constantly. Anybody that competes as a kid knows what it's like to spend all your time with your parent on the road. And I was incredibly lucky to join the British squad when I was 14. So I started going abroad. So I started going around Europe, right, and fencing in Italy and Sicily and Hungary. We used to go to Budapest every winter, and this huge competition. And I think I made third at a huge international in Valenciennes in France. And I came 21st in the world at the World Championships. And to me, I was pleased with that, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. But unfortunately, life caught up with my competing, and I went to drama school. So when I went to drama school, I filtered all of that experience into stage work, and I started choreographing fights at school. I got asked to choreograph stage fights for various different plays. When I was in the third year, we did a tour back then at LAMDA. So there was a 3-year course and a 2-year course, and they split the years in half. So there were 2 productions in each year of Romeo and Juliet, and then they cross-cast all the casts. So I played Mercutio one night, and the next night I would play Tybalt. So I would switch roles. So we had 4 casts and then split casts. So we had 8 casts, and I choreographed all the brawls and all the fights from Romeo and Tybalt and Tybalt and Mercutio, and taught all my peers at drama school. I think they paid me like £300.
Hey, that's pretty good.
£300 to do that. It was a lot of work.
Oh my gosh.
It was part of my education. So it was like unique. But yeah, £300. I was really happy with that. At the time. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love that story.
Yeah, it was. Look, I mean, it was me, and it was another one of my year, Dan Williams, and Dan was a gymnast. Actually, Dan was a Welsh. I think he might have been Welsh international gymnast and a rugby player, and he too had competed, and he just had such a passion for fight that we choreographed it together, and it was a wonderful job. And I was in a very lucky position. I got a job working at the Globe at the same time. The Globe Theatre in London, if anyone's been to London, is is a replica of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre on the South Bank. And the artistic director for many years was Mark Rylance, who people now know from various things, Wolf Hall or the BFG or many other brilliant Spielberg movies. Well, Mark was doing Hamlet, and he wanted to recreate a fight he'd done 12 years previously when he was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. So I got given a VHS of this play, this famous Hamlet from the Royal Shakespeare Company, where Mark had played him in his pajamas. And there was a fight in it, and I had to watch this grainy video and work out the fight they did, and I notated it. So all the fights we choreographed at drama school, we used to notate. And if I look at it now, it looks like gibberish, but it makes sense when you're sort of constructing things. I don't know anybody else that would use this notation, but we sort of created our own notation.
Yeah.
So I worked out what this fight was, and I taught it to one of my friends from school, and I went to the Globe and I showed it to Mark, and we made some modifications, and I started teaching Mark Rylance, Mark Lockyer, who was playing Laertes, the fight for Hamlet. But I was 19 years old, and Mark let me sit in on rehearsals on his production of Hamlet. So I was so lucky and privileged to be able to have this weird extra education that had come from the fact that I'd spent so many years fencing before I went to drama school. And actually, it's quite hard to get funding to compete for a sport like that in Britain. So when I said to my parents I wanted to go to LAMDA, they said, we can't afford that. You can't afford to go to drama school, because I'd spent all this money training and going around the world fencing. And in the end, that working and doing that job was what actually kept me in drama school.
Wow.
I was really, really lucky. I became fight captain. I got a pass for the Globe. I'd train at drama school. I do my classes at drama school. I jump on the district line and bomb along to Temple, run across the bridge, and go and watch Hamlet like multiple times a week, or just go down and show my pass and go in and watch the fight and go, yeah, okay, everything's fine, and then leave. I'll go and warm the guys up. I mean, I think about that now, and that's crazy that I got that gift. And I'm really glad that they trusted me. I'm really glad that they had faith in me. But like I said, that's because it came from the discipline that I knew. It was all point work. It was rapier. What I'd learned for years and years, and what I'd studied in great detail. I mean, you know how much goes into perfecting any of these, and when you're competing at an international level. I just think about the hours of footwork we did, and it really reminded me when we were training in Cape Town. JJ, one of the guys that Brett brought in, part of Hits International, he was previously an international Taekwondo champion, and he did a lot of Taekwondo footwork with us. And there was so many similarities with the fencing footwork, and we started swapping notes. And it's funny because up until then, I think all I'd done is really beat JJ up on screen. I think I beat him up like 3 times in the show. And that morning was the first time we actually got to, so you do Taekwondo? Oh, you're a fencer? Oh, okay. And we started talking about sport and something that wasn't just, I'm going to slam you up against the wall and hit you with a truncheon. Yeah. So the kind of gift of competition and the gift of competing and fighting, it really brings you closer to people when you're put in these situations.
Yeah, that is definitely such a gift. I love to hear about the intersectionality and how that discipline led you to then, being able to thrive as an actor and having some kind of specialty skill that was then able to kind of help fund your schooling. That's so incredible. And, you kind of spoke about it so kind of humbly, but for listeners, like these titles and the things that that he just shared in terms of the competitions that he won and things like that, like the amount of hours that goes into training and to being able to kind of get to that elite level is very, very commendable. So I just want to let you know that I can appreciate the work that I know that you put in. And
I went back. I actually. Yeah, I went back a few years back, and I decided I was going to try and get back on a British squad when I was in my early 30s. And I was training, and my first goal going back training was not to give myself a hard time that I hadn't won any world medals in the last few years. Because as soon as I went back, I felt instantly competitive like I used to be. And I'd really regretted the years I'd missed. and I had to be quite gentle with myself getting back into the training. And just as I was about a hit away from basically being in the top 6 of the senior rankings, is what I would have needed to get my GB colours and be able to do A grades internationally. Just as I did that, I got cast in a job that took me away for months, and I was like, oh man, and I just couldn't do everything, and I had to just stop.
Yeah.
So I was really pleased to get back that close when I was much older, because it is really a young man's sport as well. Fencing, it's a
But you have the foundation, which shows, and that kind of sticks with you. I love your Romeo and Juliet story, because back in high school, like, we'd have our little productions and whatnot, and I also got to choreograph the Mercutio and Tybalt scene. So that was always exciting.
Good.
And I'm like, just send me in for that. But the problem is, I didn't know anything about fencing, so it probably looked a little inauthentic in terms of what it probably should have looked like. But it was exciting. Yeah. But I don't know. There are what?
There are principles of fight, I think, that are quite universal, and then a lot of it's to do with distance. A lot of people who don't do fight don't necessarily understand distance. And one way I would always say about fighting distance with a weapon, because if people when we were studying at drama school, some of my friends thought it was very funny that if they pulled out their sword, I would flinch. And they said, why do you flinch? I said, because we're within fighting distance. And also you just put the tip in the air. And ever since I was a child, I've been taught you never put the tip in the air, because people can lose eyes that way.
Yes.
And I have this inbuilt in me. I have this thing built. They don't have it, and so I'm always like, I can feel that my periphery is still switched on. So I was like, don't make me twitch. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's actually dangerous. But yeah. Yeah.
See, these are good habits. Yes, they are weapons. And these are good habits to have and everything. So, but I love it. And I don't know if I've heard that fencing, you said, seems to be like a geeky sport. I don't think I've ever heard that, because I always think it's super cool. Like, I loved movies like Scaramouche, and like Princess Bride is one of my all-time favorite films. And and I just love it. I love it, love it, love it. So I was super excited to talk to you about it, because someone at your level of expertise, it's like, yes, I'm really glad you were able to share.
It's funny. There are some films where, like Princess Bride, for instance, where the script is the thing. The point work and the actual choreography is actually secondary to the fact that it's a really, really well written scene, and it's full of charm and comedy. There's a film with Danny Kaye where he flits between being terrible at fencing and really proficient at fencing, because he has a spell cast on him. I think it's called The Court Jester. It's a very old movie where someone's clicking their fingers, and it clicks between him being terrible and really good. And that, again, that's like The Princess Bride. It's just a really charming scene. But to actually find a film where the sword work, the point work is what I would say authentic. Like, you've talked to Brett, you choreograph, you understand, seeing fight on camera that people who have competed and understand those things can really appreciate and say, wow, that is well done. That's sort of elusive. And I sometimes, when I wasn't working, I would go and sit behind Johnny and Brett when they were on their stunt unit, when they were on their fight unit. Like, the boys have a fight in the casino basement, and I sat for the whole time they filmed that. And I would just watch them like caning each other. And I was watching Johnny and I was watching Brett and seeing when they wanted to cut and when they wanted to shoot, and so how they could sell the action in a way that was authentic. And some of the old French movies, like there's a great French movie called Le Bossu, where the sword work is just absolutely phenomenal. And that's actually something I haven't done on camera. I've done other stuff, but I haven't actually done the thing I do. So like the duelists and things like that. The work is phenomenal. Of course. Yeah, but it's famously like Harvey Keitel is actually using the aerial off a car. It's actually not a sword. I'm pretty sure that it's an aerial, and Ridley Scott's just so clever about getting the right effect rather than, it's a very interesting thing, seeing how things break down. I'd like to do more of that.
Yes, I think it would be really cool to have you.
Bill can't do it. Bill can't do it. But
I know. But you get to do a lot of other projects, so I'm sure it'll come up at some point. You just got to start putting out videos, and so all your casting go, oh, you know what? We need to put him in a film where he's film scene, obviously. It's such this
or maybe just need to make it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know a lot of people, so and that would be so much fun. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I've just really enjoyed talking to everybody from Warrior and hearing kind of like all the different stories of being on scene and set and everything. And in terms of the stage versus the film, because you have a lot of your cast members, like they also do stage and film and vice versa. And I know that you kind of have a love for both. Do you prefer one over the other, or is it just kind of wherever the work takes you?
It's kind of wherever the work takes me. I mean, the thing is that financially, there's a reality that stage pays less than any other work. And I haven't done a play now in a good few years, and I miss it. I really miss being on stage and going to the theatre. And in London, the theatre is so phenomenal. There's such a huge variety. Like, it feels a little bit like watching people swim or people compete. I want to jump in. If I go and see a play, I often sit there thinking, oh man, I need to do a play. I want to get, I want to go and jump in. It's a bit like watching Perry playing his guitar in New York and thinking, oh man, I need to get on a plane and go and see Perry and play some guitar, because it always has that pull for me. I think I prefer theatre. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing more TV and filming lately. Right. I studied stage at LAMDA, but my first love was really B movies from the video guy that used to come around our village with a car bootload full of old B and C movies that me and my brothers used to devour. And that's all, like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Bruce Lee movies, like all these like really genre films. My younger brother has a really incredible encyclopedic knowledge of movies. It was really that and like British comedy. And it was only when I was 18 and I came to London that the theatre kind of presented itself and then kind of took over. So I've got sort of weird, all these different passions where I want to do a bit of that and I want to do a bit of that. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to answer. Yeah. Warrior's a good marriage of all of them, because Bill is, Bill's a real theatrical kind of character for me to play. For a start, I begged them to let me grow this whole huge beard, and then I put on a lot of weight for Bill. I ate a lot of food. Everyone else is training and getting skinny and getting muscles, and I'm just like eating cheese pizzas and enjoying myself. And then I sort of regretted it halfway through and thought, I shouldn't have done this. This is a bad idea. Well, yeah, exactly. I was like, give me those cookies soon. I actually find that one of the things I like most about Warrior is it feels like a theatrical company. Brett's fight unit, and not just that, but the way Jonathan runs things. Mm-hmm. He got all of us in as actors to do what he calls a page turn, which is a much more thing that writers normally do to check they're on the same page as they write the blocks. But Jonathan decided to do with us as actors. So Warrior, more than any other job I've done on TV or film, feels like a theatrical ensemble and a team right from the very top. And so there were days on Warrior where I felt like, man, this is the perfect gig. Especially walking around the set. The Chinatown set is vast in Cape Town and very, very real. And it's not that hard to act when everything is there. The world is created. Yeah,
you're transported. You're like, I'm going to go to the stand and buy my veggies for today. It's very authentic.
It literally looks like that. Right? It really does look like that. In fact, there was a day where Tom was having to eat all these sausages. It was the Chinese New Year, and they had all these buns, and they were saying, if you can eat any of these things on the stall, and they said that a little too early, and between takes, I think they all got devoured. People taking them. Those are supposed to be props for the scene.
Right.
Nah, they've gone. We're too good.
Yeah, you can't give the go-ahead to a bunch of hungry actors.
Don't tell the actors there's free food. Don't tell the actors there's free food.
It's like craft services on set, like literally on set. How could you say no? It's like one of the best things about set is crafts.
Exactly.
Yes, the little buns.
Did you get What? What is this? Fine. Yeah. Okay. I've got to work.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so much. So aside from the fencing and the acting and you know, we were talking a little off air, your hands are quite full now with a new baby. You're not sleeping very much. But if you did have downtime, what are things you enjoy doing and how do you just kind of decompress?
I play guitar. I used to play guitar before I had kids. I garden, actually. I garden.
Oh, I need some advice.
Yeah.
We just started a garden not too long ago. And so we're just out there like, I guess this is what you do. You throw the seeds in the dirt and hope for the best and water it. And
yeah. Everybody told me it's just trial and error. You just have to see what works in the ground that you have and then cultivate it. And I have to say quite a few things have not worked out, but I've got a nice full garden now. I'm growing quite a lot of fruit and obsessed with flowers. I had a few years ago, I had an accident. I used to surf. I used to like surfing and things. And I had an accident in the sea and I broke my back. I broke 5 bones in my back. So I have a spinal fusion. So I have a spinal, I have a sort of T2 to T5, I think, or T2 to T7. It's fused. I have 12 pedicle screws in my back. So I still have mobility. And thankfully thank God I'm not in a wheelchair or not dead, because I shouldn't have really come out of the sea. But that since then, I discovered that I needed to spend more time in open spaces in green as part of the recovery process from that. Yeah. So just before I did that, I've been doing a lot of yoga. I do yoga. I really love yoga. And at the time I'd been riding stunt horses for a job and I was pretty strong. So every tiny little millimeter and element of the things I've been doing the previous weeks, I think saved my life in the accident. And so part of the recovery, it was just an extension of that, really. I just continued with the yoga, and part of that was that I incorporate being in the garden.
Wow.
And it sounds funny, but it's part of the physical recovery from a traumatic event, was to get your hands dirty, get around some green. Yeah, for sure. Earthy. Yes. Get part of the earth, and it's meditation. And I really needed it. So yeah.
Wow. I just started watching the 100-Foot Wave documentary on HBO.
Oh, wow.
And when you said that surfing accident, I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm only on like the second episode, but it's literally following around. Is it Garrett? Is that his name? The world. Yeah. And literally he's chasing this 100-foot wave, and he just surfed a 78-foot one in this last episode. But they were showing things that go wrong and people flipping off their boards. So when you said that, like all I saw was you like kind of, oh my gosh. And I will not get on a surfboard because I have this like unnatural fear of sharks, like really unnatural. Like I barely want to go in past my knees kind of thing in the water. Yeah. And I'm just like, because I'm obsessed with them and I can't stop watching them either. I love them so much, and we're in their territory. So they totally have a right to, do what they need to do. We're invading their space as far as I'm concerned, but I won't get on a surfboard because of it. So, but I find it fascinating. And where do you surf in,
My wife is the same. My wife has the same obsession with sharks. Like she knows so much about sharks. In fact, the last thing she said to me before I went in the sea when I broke my back was watch out for the sharks. And I think she wanted to go home, but she was like, "Oh, watch out for the sharks, honey." I
get her.
I was supposed to be coming back to do a TV show in the north of England, and there's pretty good surf on the northeast coast. Okay. It's freezing now.
I was just going to ask, it looks so cold.
It is. And I just bought a new wetsuit, which was a 5'3", which was slightly thicker than what I'd needed. And again, that extra millimeter, I think, probably helped save my life. So there's a lot of surfing in Wales, and there's a lot of surfing on the south coast in Britain. But it'd been mainly California for me and with some friends. And did you see the drone footage recently that came out of the sharks that are up and down the Californian coast? It's fascinating. They don't actually attack that much.
I know, and
there's a lot of misinformation about sharks.
I know. I've watched all the docs, and I don't think they're the bad ones. I think we're the bad ones. We're mistake. It's usually on accident. Like, they don't mean to bite us because they think we're a seal or something. But I think it's the control issue. I like to be in control, and I'm not when I'm there because I know that they're in control, and that's probably a big part of it.
The guys in South Africa and Cape Town, they surf in Muizenberg Beach, which is on the other side of the Cape, and it's warm water. Okay. And they know they're there. They know there's a lot more sharks there, that I believe, in California. And they don't care. They just go out and they're very happy. And there's a number of islands off the coast of South Africa, which I believe Robben Island, I might be completely wrong, but I do think the translation of Robben Island is Seal Island, because one of the guys said there's about 4 islands that all have the same name. They all basically translate as Seal Island because the seals all over them. And of course, because the seals all over them, even though the water is cold on some of those, there are sharks, but there are more around Muizenberg. Anyway, I'm banned from surfing. I'm not allowed to go anymore.
Right.
So, we did go paddleboarding in France, and I was paddleboarding, and the sea sort of was just starting to ripple slightly, and I tried to catch it, and my wife said, "What are you doing? You trying to catch that wave?" I was like, "No." I think it's fair enough. My family don't want to go through that again. So
that's fair. I'm kind of with her on that one, but also I get it because watching this documentary, you could just see that thin line between love and obsession, right? Yeah.
One of the best things about it was going out really, really early in the morning and just like hanging on the board with people and the wildlife. You say that, but there's all kinds of other things in the water that are calm. And then the birds that fly along as the sun's coming up. And, there's a real spiritual thing about feeling the water, feeling the wave, feeling the weather, and taking the time to do it. And I was really, really enjoying it. And it's just unfortunate that the seabed had changed shape. I sort of stayed out too long because the weather was bad and I really wanted to. And the mistake was mine, even though it was a sort of freak wave that dumped me on the seabed. And then I kind of like managed to get on my feet righted. And then my friend was trying to help me, but it was not working out. He tried to like hold me actually. And I said, don't do that. And we discovered later that if he'd helped me how he wanted to, he probably would have just like killed me because I had a burst fracture. So it would have sort of like pulled me out of the alignment and my spinal cord. It's very delicate, you see. So I just walked up to the beach and I sort of stood by the edge of the water and I knelt down and undid the board. And I walked up the beach to where my wife was. And it's funny, at drama school, you do this thing called Alexander technique, which is all about relaxing and letting go of tension so that you don't damage your voice on stage. And they teach it to you, and it's sort of boring. And you think, well, do we really need to know this kind of thing? My God, I was so glad that I did those classes because I just did a sort of yoga Alexander walk up the beach as carefully as I could. She said, why have you got blood coming out your face? I said, I just broke my back. She said, how do you know? And I said, because I'm holding up the top half of my body. Like here, I was really heavy. I thought, oh my God, I've got to lose some weight. I was like, this top half was like I feel like I'm going to do that. Anyway, wow. It was amazing. And what I'd say is the surfing's very safe. But things can happen anywhere with any kind of sport. But I miss it. But I'm also I'm weirdly grateful it happened, I learned a lot from that.
I'm sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it. And I want to be mindful of your time. Otherwise, I would actually keep picking your brain about this. I'd love to pick this up and maybe talk to you again and talk about those lessons and those life experiences. I think that we can all learn from them too. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. And I know that you have a little one to get back to and lots of things going on. So I appreciate your time today. And it was just so much great. It's always great to talk to another Warrior family member. And but besides the Warrior stuff, this is really phenomenal.
I thought you were going to ask me more gossip. I thought you were going to ask me more gossip about the cast. I really did.
Oh my gosh, I want to, but no, I'm tactful. But you know, okay. I also say I'm saving it. I have to warm you up a little bit, you know. So part 2 will be all gossip about the rest of the cast. So Kieran has agreed that next episode will be gossip.
I'd love to come back and talk about gossip and being with the cast on set and who messes around and who doesn't. But the thing is we are in a funny position because season 3 has been greenlit, but we are quite some way away from filming it. Mm-hmm. And it's really exciting that we know that that's there, because the 20 episodes that exist right now that people are still finding, we've got another year's worth at least before we really do any press for season 3. Yeah. So, you know, there's a whole load of stuff to talk about. And like, you know.
Well, lovely.
I'll come back and touch you.
I love that. You are welcome any time. So, door is always open, or the mic's always on, however we say in podcasting. I don't know what that even means. But Kieran, thank you so much. This was so lovely. And it was great to meet you.
Pleasure.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.